Hilchis Nizkei Mamon Perik Sheni. Echad Avos Nezikim v'Echad Atuldis. Im Hoya Avmud till days of Muadis. V'im Hoya Tam till days of Kameyu. So the Ravid really tells on the Rambam, and he asks that we see that there's a musik called that a muad lekeren yamin is not a muad lekeren smeil. In other words, being a muad in one aspect is not necessarily a right that you're a muad in another aspect. And al derech zeh, you could be a muad lekeren, and you could be a muad lekeren and be a tam for the other things. L'mashal, if you became a huad lekeren, so but you still remain a tam ligev lishech lirbeis, etc., etc. So Meila is asking, what are you saying? You have muad till days of muadis. That's the question of the Ram, the Ravid. The Mises, the Rambam himself said that. The Rambam earlier in Perek Aleph clearly said that if there's Chamisha Maisim Tamim Bebehema and V'mhua Dola Echad Mehem, so you're moved to that one and you're not moved to the others. So it's clearly in the Rambam that if the fact that you became a muad lekeren doesn't make you a muad for the other tuldis of keren, the other four tamim which are the tuldis of keren. So the Pashtus Pshat in Rambam is that it means to say, generally speaking, when you start those things that the av is a muad, like shein v'regel, so al derech zeh, the tulda is also a muad. So in other words, the tulda of shein and the tulda of regel is also a muad. And those things which the av is a tam, which is keren, so that the tulda is also a tam. But that's l'chatchila the way it starts. Masha'inkin b'hamshech. So when a tam becomes a muad, so the fact that the av became a muad doesn't mean that the tulda became a muad. That's l'chura the pashto pshat. No, why is the Ravid not learning like that pshat, like l'chura the pashto pshat in the Rambam? Nachamol. Echad avos nezikim v'echad atoldos, which would be the taich that the avos nezikim and the toldos generally have the same din. To say im hoya av muad, if the av was a muad, it's toldes of muadis. Im hoya tam is toldes of kamel. And that's the general rule. And then bepeil v'chol avos nezikim v'chol toldesei muadim v'tchilasim. Because all the avos nezikim are all muadim chutz mikeren v'toldesav. By Karen, so Karen inside the Av is a tam, inside the Tuldas are a tam. Now, halacha base, kol Tulda kav shelo. The Tuldas of the Nezikin always have the same din like the Av. Chutz, with the exception of mitzreides, haminatzen mitachas ragla behema, b'shas hilucha. So when behema is walking, and the tzreides are being minatzim, are being thrown from under its feet while it's walking. It's not doing anything specific. It's not kicking. It's just walking, and pebbles are flying. And and since they are tulda regel, so they're potter b'shus harabim keregel. And v'im b'shus hanizik is mishal min hayafish b'nechosav keregel shehuav. And it was lagabi this prat that they're potter b'shus harabim, lagabi the prat that they pay nezik sholim and hayafish. They pay. I'm sorry, not nezik sholim. The fact that they pay min hayafish b'nechosav in that prat, they're deimel regel. So this is a special din. Like the Rambam says, Allah misinai, that tzreiris, even though be'emes it's a tulda de regel, and generally the tulda of the ovis are all kameyu in all aspects, but masha'inkin tzreiris, there's a special din that it pays a chotzi nezik. So it's a tulda de regel in the fact that it's pater b'shus harabim. It's a tulda in the regel in the fact that it pays min hayafish ben chosav. But in this prat that it pays a nezik sholem, and that it's different. That is different, that it pays a chotzi nezik. Ketzad behema shenichnasu lechatzara nizik v'holcha v'yitzreiris minatzim mitachas ragla v'shovrus hakelim. So the din is mishalem chotzi nezik min hayafish ben chosav. V'davar zeh halachim b'pi hakaboli. It's halachim mish misinai that nezik, that chotzi nezik tzreiris, that tzreiris is only a chotzi nezik. And basically the idea of tzreiris is that it's koiche. We'll learn behemshel. There's lav dafka tzreiris. Anything is a mitzvah where a behema is mazik with the goof of the behema. The behema went ahead and took its foot or another part of its body or something that's attached to the behema and was mazik. So that's called a regular mazik of not koichai, but rather biadayim of the behema or begufe of the behema, and then he's pays taka nezik sholim. That's the din of regel. Masha'inkin, when a behema is being mazik, not directly the behema, but mikoichai. Like over here, the behema is throwing these tzreiris, and through the fact that the behema was the koyach of the behema went into the tzreiris. Through that, the tzreiris were mazik. That's the koyach of the behema. So that's the halacha mishmi sinai, that the koyach of the behema is a chotzi nezik. But on the other end, it has all the other dinim of regel, which is that it's poter b'shus harabim, and that it's also mishalim min ha'aliyah. Halacha dalet v'chein im hoysem haleches b'shus harabim v'nitzu tzreiris mitachas ragleh l'rshus hanizik. So here the behemoth is walking in the Rishus Harabim. Tzreiris are flying out from under the feet of the behemoth from the Rishus Harabim into the Rishus Hayochid. V'shavarus hakelim. So the Ram writes, Mishalim chotzi nezik. In such a case, you also pay chotzi nezik. Now this is like a chiddush because lepeil, we're talking about the behemoth is walking in the Rishus Harabim. We learned before that when a behemoth walks in the Rishus Harabim, he's potter on regel, and the reason is the Ram teaches is because yeshel Rishus lahalach. Since he has Rishus lahalach, so therefore, anything that happens bepashtus through the hiluch, he's potter on. Whereas b'negei the Karen in Rishus Harabim is chayiv because he doesn't have Rishus lahazik through Karen. You have to be watched the behemoth, not to be mazik through Karen. Masha'enkin lahalach, he has Rishus lahalach, and it's impossible to watch. So therefore, it's pashut that he's potter for regel b'Rishus Harabim. That's the din. I mean, b'emes it's a pasuk ubir b'stayacher, but we said that the Rambam is masber the din. That's also the rif. And from that came out a halacha, that the diuk of the halacha is that let's say there was a eitz aruch b'Rishus Harabim that extends into Rishus Hayochid, and the behemoth steps on something on this eitz aruch in Rishus Harabim, and he's mazik in the Rishus Hayochid, he would also be potter. Because lepel, that reason of yeshli Rishus lahalach would also be a reason to potter, even though the hezek actually took place in the Rishus Hayochid. But bepel, since the Maisa hezek mitzad the behemoth happened in the Rishus Harabim, so lechura al pizeh, lechura should also be that if the behemoth is mahaleches b'Rishus Harabim, and the tzreiris which are minatzim mitachas ragleh l'Rishus hanizik, and v'shavris hakelim, so just like regel is potter b'Rishus Harabim, so these tzreiris should also be potter because lepel the tzreiris are coming from the Rishus Harabim, but lepel the Ram writes not like that. So there's a dion about it. The dion that tzreiris are not as usual as a regular regel. So even though a regular regel is darker lahalach, but tzreiris is not so usual. So mele that p'tur is only when it's actually in the Rishus, side the tzreiris are flying out in the Rishus Harabim, and side the hezek actually happened in Rishus Harabim. Masha'enken, when the tzreiris went from the Rishus Harabim into Rishus Hayochid, so then it's not, there's no p'tur of Rishus Harabim, which that's what's brought down in the Achreinim, and see, the beard, tzorich beard, the lechura sof kol sof, he's doing it in Rishus Harabim, so why is he chayiv? But I'll call upon him, the halach is clear, that the Rambam is saying that when the behemoth is walking in Rishus Harabim, and the tzreiris is going from this behemoth into Rishus Hayochid, so the din is his chayiv. That's din number one. And then Darsa al Keli B'Rishus Nizik Vishavrase, and V'Nafal al Keli Achiv Vishavreim, from the broken pieces of the first Keli, pieces fell out and broke another Keli, is Allah Rishon Mishalem Nezik Shalom, because that's the regular din of regel. And Vala Achrin Mishalem Chotzi Nezik, because that's the regular din of tzreiris. L'chura, that's a pashta halach. Halachei. Hoysa mahaleches B'Rishus Harabim, uboato, v'hitizo tzreiris, v'hiziko B'Rishus Harabim. Is potter. Now we know that regel is potter b'Rishus Harabim. So here this behemoth is walking in Rishus Harabim. He was hitiza tzreiris and hiziko b'Rishus Harabim. So he's potter. But the ma'ase is that this hitiza was through bata. Through bata is a be'ita. The behemoth kicked. Now when a behemoth kicks, that becomes keren. That l'chura becomes keren. So l'chura, this is an act of keren b'Rishus Harabim. This is like l'chura tzreiris of keren. But the Vaila, the Rambam is saying that it's potter. Why? The Rambam is giving it, even though it was bata, the Rambam is giving it a din of regel, and regel is potter b'Rishus Harabim. However, v'ntofas hanizik, revia nezik, is ein mitziin miyodeh. Sha'adavar sofiku, shemesh shinihui, ve'ein etuldas regel, shahri bata. So the Rambam is saying that there is a suffix over here, whether this is regel or this is keren. According to the tzad that it's keren, so then keren is chayav v'chotzi nezik. And here the Rambam is also saying that tzreiris of keren is chayav a chotzi of a chotzi. No, tzreiris is chayav a chotzi nezik, chotzi of what you would normally pay. So if we're going to give this bar to a din of keren, so memela, but lepel is tzreiris of keren, so therefore he only pays a revia. So, but there's a suffix over here. The suffix is it a tzreiris of regel and therefore he's potter b'Rishus Harabim, or is it a tzreiris of keren and therefore you chayav a revia nezik? So therefore be'etzim you don't have to pay because it's a suffix. But on the other end, if there was tfisa of a revia nezik, you have to pay. Now here the Ravid also tells us that Lechura, why is there a tzad that Boata should be Karen? Lechura is saying it's Pasha that it's, what's the tzad that Boata should be Regel? Lechura, since he was Boata, so Boata we learned is Karen. When a behemoth is Boata, is Karen. So even if it was Boata and made Tzereris or Boata indirectly, either way it's Karen. So Lechura, it's Pasha that this is Tzereris the Karen, and Yochai V'Reviya Nezik. And the Rambam seems to be saying that even though the Tzereris came through Be'ita, but since it's Tzereres that's coming under the Regel, so that could also be part of the Halacha L'Meish Misina that has a din of Regel. That Tzereres has a din of Regel. You have to know where it's like another Halacha L'Meish Misina. The Pashas, the whole Halacha L'Meish Misina is that Koichai of a behema is only a Chatzi Nezik. That's L'Chura the Halacha L'Meish Misina. So Koichai of Regel is Halacha L'Meish Misina, is only a Chatzi Nezik, and Koichai of Karen is a Reviya Nezik. That's L'Chura the Halacha L'Meish Misina. Here seems to be a svara that even though the Tzereris came through Be'ita, so from deswegen should have a din of Regel and be part of Rishus Harabim, which is Sarich Iyun. The Achreinim talk about it. Halacha Vav. Now, Boata Ba'orez B'Rishus HaNizik, V'hitiza Tzereris Machmas HaBe'ita, V'hiziku Sham. So over here again, so since it was a Boata, so there's a svara that it's Karen. We learned before, when it was a Be'ita, there was a Shaila, if it's Karen or Regel. That was the Shaila. When the Tzereris comes through Be'ita, does it have a din of Karen or does it have a din of Regel? We're not really sure what's the svara that it should have a din of Regel, but that's the Tutstadim. Is Be'ita, when Tzereris come through Be'ita, is it a din of Karen or is it a din of Regel? So when we're dealing with Rishus Harabim, is the question, is it a din of Regel and it's Potter Legamri, or is it a din of Karen and Memela it's Chayiv at least a Reviya Nezik? When we're dealing in Rishus HaNizik, so the Shaila is it Chayiv a Chatzi Nezik? In other words, does it have a din of Regel and Memela it's Chayiv a Chatzi Nezik? Or does it have a din of Karen and Memela it's only Chayiv a Reviya Nezik? That's this halacha Vav. Ba'ata ba'aretz b'Rishus HaNizik. It was Ba'ata on the ground. And v'hitiza Tzereres machmas habita, and v'hiziku shomer was mazik in the Rishus HaNizik. So the first thing is Chayiv l'shalom Reviya Nezik. That's Pasha, that he has to pay a Reviya Nezik, because the Shinuhu Ba'atazat Tzereres, since there was a Be'ita, so Memela, at the very least, it's a Karen B'Rishus HaNizik, and it's a Tzereres of Karen. Memela, you pay a Reviya Nezik. However, there's a svara that it's Regel, just like we had the svara that it should be part of Rishus Harabim. So over here also, V'im Tofes HaNizik Chatzi Nezik, Ein Mitziyim Yodei. Because Lepel, it's a svara that maybe it's Regel, and if it's Regel, he's entitled to a Chatzi Nezik. Now, v'afilo hoysem haleches b'mokim sheyev shelo shalei tatas, b'pashas it would have been matas even if it wouldn't have been bata, because Lepel was in a place where there was a lot of pebbles and it was walking there. It was inevitable. It was for sure that it's going to happen a beat. It's going to happen hatazah. There'll be stones that'll be propelled from under his feet. Lepel he kicked. It didn't happen naturally. He kicked. So the din is Mishalom Reviya Nezik, like you said before, because it's at least a Tzereres of Keren, which is entitled to a Reviya Nezik. V'im Tofes Chatzi Nezik is Ein Mitziyim B'Yodi, because there's a tzad that it's Regel, it's not Keren. Halacha Zayin. Kol HaMishalom Nezik Sholim is a Reya Tashlum and Momen Shuhu Chayiv L'Shalmei Kimi Shalovi Mechaveri Shuhu Chayiv L'Shalom. Just like when a person borrows from someone, the Rambam is being magded the chil between Mammon and Knas. When a person borrows from someone, so the person gave you money, so obviously you owe him money. You don't need Bezdin to paskin that you owe him money. He gave you money, so you owe him money. So al derev zeh, when you're mazik someone and there's a chiyuv of nezik, when there's a hezik which the chiyuv is nezik sholim, so the pashtus is the act itself causes the chiyuv mammon. You don't need a psak of bezdin in order to create the chiyuv. However, v'chola mishalem chatzi nezik, so then harei tashlumin is knas. The tashlumin is a knas, and the chiddush of a knas is that asher yashian olihim, which means that it has to be bezdin has to be mechayivim, and until bezdin is mechayivim, so memela the chiyuv wasn't chal. So that's the din. So whenever there's a nezik shalom and there's a din of mammon, you don't need a chiyuv of bezdin, be'etzim yechayiv. And whenever there's a chiyuv of chatzi nezik, so it's always a knas. Chutz mechatzi nezik shel tzreiris, shehu halacha. That's halacha l'meish misinai, and part of the halacha l'meish misinai is also that it has a din of mammon. The pashtus advarim is the halacha l'meish misinai is only to take away half of the nezik that you would have to pay mammon. Whereas be'etzem mitzat regel you have to pay a nezik shalom of mammon. That's the regular din of regel. So be'emes is a regular tashluman of regel. It's just the halacha mesh misinai takes away the chatzin nezik of that nezik shalom. So what's left is the chatzin nezik of mamon, which is the regular mamon of regel. That's the pashtus advar. Halacha ches zaklal kol mishalom asheyizik is a reza mamon, and the kol mishalom yesral oipoches if he's paying either more than sheyizik or less. Kegen tashlumi kefil a chatzin nezik is a yeser ala keren a poches. Whatever is more or the whole less, whatever he's paying who is less, is knas. And memela vein chayov knas el al pi edem. You need to have edem to establish that there's a chiyuv knas. Edem have to come to Bezdin, and Bezdin paskins that is chayiv knas, and that's when the chiyuv really happens. Ein chayov knas el al pi edem. Aval hameda b'chol knas min haknoses is potted by being made on the knas. That doesn't. Knows when a person is made on mammon that he owes, so he's chayiv. Knas he doesn't owe. Knas is the pshat, he's saying a story, and Bezdin has to paskin based on the story that he owes knas. I mean, his story we don't believe. We don't accept his story. You know, the pashtus advarim. I mean, the emissaries gonna made the knas is there's a patur as well. But lepeil, the pashtus advarim is that when a person is made the knas, his haydo is not enough to go ahead and paskin that he's mechuyev. Halacha tes. Tarnagel sheheshet reishe. But the nekudas advarim that we learn is that regel b'chlal is momon. Normally a chotzinezik, in other words, the chotzinezik of Karen is knas. Masha'in kein chotzinezik tzreiris, which is a chotzinezik. So even though it's a chotzinezik, but it still has a din of momon. Halacha tes. And therefore, the b'chotzinezik would be chayv. Tarnagel sheheshet reishe la'aver klischuches and v'tokabei and v'shavri. So the Tarnagel put his head into a jar, into a klischuches, and lepel he made a noise in that, and v'shavri, the noise broke the keli. Is imhoyu b'techi tavlon kiyitzeren sheheshet reishi kedei lachlan. The reason why he put its head in is normal because there was tavlon. So mela la tavlon is the poshet mishal nazik shalom. He ate the tavlon, so he pays nazik shalom. But them and the shdava and b'hala keli is mishalim chotzi nazik kechatzi nazik tzreiris. So just like if the behemoth would throw something, and that would be mazik something, so that's considered a chotzi nazik. So al derez over here, the behemoth through its voice, so to speak, didn't touch the keli. It broke the keli by the voice coming out of the behemoth. So mele that has a din of chotzi nezik tzreiris, and mele and shekachu darke, since it's regular for a tarnagel to put his head into this sluchis, into this klischuchis, because there's food over there. So mele he pays a chotzi nezik. It's not karen. V'im hoya hakeli reikon, so then as a reza meshuna u'mishalim chotzi nezik b'chol achnosis. So the Ram is saying that if there was food in the keli, so on the food he pays a nezik shalom because it's normal, and on the keli he pays a chotzi nezik al zin chotzi nezik tzreiris because it's all a normal act. Masha'inkin, if he put his head into this keli without food in there, so it's an irregular act. So therefore, it's no longer going to the gather of chotzinezik tzreiris of regel. It goes into the gather of keren. And therefore, he pays a chotzinezik because it's keren. It's not regel. Now the ma'is is it's shver. The lechura you have to understand that enochinami it's keren, but lechura why are you paying a chotzinezik? Lechura you should be paying a revia nezik. We learned till now that tzreiris of keren pays a revia nezik. So once we establish that putting his head in there when there's no food is considered a shinui, so and it's tzreiris because we learned that before that when there was food there he only paid a chotzi nezik because it was tzreiris. So l'chura together it's keren, and on the other end it's tzreiris. So l'chura he has to pay a revia nezik. So the Maisa is the Maggid Mishnah says that the reason is it's not mamish a shinui. The shinui because the shinui is not in the tzvacha. The shinui is in the fact that it put its head in. Okay, but Lepel, Sovkosov, this shini that it put its head in is causing it to have a din of Karen, not a din of Regel. So Mela, once we establish that it's a din of Karen, so Behemshech Le'Dazeh, it's Lechura Karen, it's Tzreiris of Karen. I don't really understand the Pshat in the Maggid Mishnah. The Maisa says the Ram Moro brings from the Mirmesha to be mazbed up the Maggid Mishnah with Lomdus and they explain the Havana of the din of Karen and Tzreiris. I didn't understand it, but I'll call upon him. That's the halach of the Rambam, clear that if there was food in there, so lepel he pays on the keli a chotzi nezik als din tzreiris and als din tzreiris of regel. Masha'inken, if there was no food there, so then it goes into a gather of Karen, then it goes into a din of Karen, but Pashto then he would be chayiv also b'shus harabim as a din of Karen, but he doesn't mention that it's tzreiris of Karen. Memele, he pays a chotzi nezik. His Rambam says clearly, mishalim chotzi nezik, chol haknosis. And tzorich beer, why it doesn't have a din of tzreiris of Karen? Halacha Yud, v'chein sus shetzonaf, or v'chamer shenoar, v'shavres hakelim. They made noises, and as a result of that, it caused them to break kelim. So there's also mishalim chotzi nezik, because we're dealing with something normal, and therefore it's kedarke, it's regel, but it's regel of tzreiris, because he didn't touch him exactly with his body. Whereas the whole din of a behemoth chayiv nezik sholim when his foot touched the davar hanizik. Masha'inkin, if he threw tzreiris and those tzreiris broke the davar hanizik, so then he's not chayiv. And al derech if he gave out a voice or whatever, anything that he didn't, he caused a hezek to happen, but it didn't come through direct contact, so that's called tzreiris. That's called koichet. Hatarnagelim muadim lahalach kedarkan l'shaban. It's regular for a tarnagelim to go and be and do hezek. Now, hoya chut eritzua kosher b'ragleim. There was a chut eritzua that was tied to the feet of the tarnagel. And lepel v'nestabach keli be'esei achut v'nesgalgal v'nishbar, and a keli got tangled up on that chut, and lepel the chut and lepel the keli broke. So the din is mishalim chotzi nezik, because that's also a din of tzreiris. In other words, since this chut caused this keli to roll, and through that the keli got broken, so it's not that you directly broke the keli, but rather you caused the keli to roll, and that through that the keli got broken, so therefore you're mishalim chotzi nezik. Now who is mishalim the chotzi nezik? So the person that tied this chut to the tarnagel, the person that tied the chut to the tarnagel, gave the chut a din of a tarnagel. The chut has a din of a tarnagel. So whoever tied this chut to the tarnagel is responsible for whatever happens with this chut in causing something to damage. The person went ahead and tied this chut to the tarnagel, so then he's responsible for the hezek that happened through this chut. And since we're talking about this type of a hezek, which means it rolled, so that's a tzroiristic hezek, so he's responsible for chotzi nezik. Aval im nikshal regleim v'yelovs, the tarnagel were walking, and lepel, this chut got tangled up on the feet of the tarnagelim. So then bala tarnagelim potter, the balabas of the tarnagelim is potter because it's not his chut, and he didn't put the chut on. Memela, the fact that the chut got tangled up. So in other words, like this, we look at the chut kilo, a new mazik called the chut, and the din is that when a person makes a mazik, so he could make a mazik. A person ties this chut to the tarnagel, so he's the bala mazik. Masha'inkin, just like we learned, we'll learn behemshech, ish ber v'lei sher ber, which means a man could make a bear, and through that he becomes a bala mazik of the bear. Masha'inkin, if the share makes a bear, so the owner of the share doesn't become responsible for the bear. The owner of the share is responsible for the share, the zek is for the share. If someone makes a bear, he's responsible for the bear. But if his share makes a bear, for him to be responsible for the bear, that doesn't happen. So Alderev's over here. When the person puts this chut into the tarnagel, so he becomes the bala hezek of whatever that chut is going to be mazik. Masha'inkin, if that happened through the tarnagel himself, so it's kilo, the tarnagel is creating the mazik called the chut, and lepel, the bala tarnagel, is not mechuyev. That's the nekudas advarim. Avalim niksher al ragleim me'elov is para tarnagelim potter. The bala tarnagel is potter because he's not responsible for the fact that his tarnagel created this chut as being a mazik. And however, v'mhoya lechut bailam and v'loyhoya chut hefker, so then bala chut chayiv chatzi nezik. The bala chut would be chayiv chatzi nezik. Sharehu keber hamizgalgal. It's like his ber hamizgalgal, and memela, and he's being mazik through tzreiris. So there's like tzreiris happening from this ber hamizgalgal. So it's his chut which is being mizgalgal and causing that there should be the gilgal of the keli. So memela, a tzreiris the kechiyuv of a bear comes out. Psachidush. And memela, so you also chayiv a chatzi nezik, the bala ber. That's the bala chut. That's talking about the bala chut wasn't matzniya the chut. However, it's near bala chut is a chut. Lepel, the bala chut was matzniya the chut. In other words, he put it away in a place that it shouldn't have been found. Vatarnagil dorsno olav hitziu. Lepel, the tarnagil got it out. V'nikshe b'ragleim v'shover b'yisakelim. So then af bala chut potter shari yonasu. So the bala tarnagil is potter because lepel, he's not responsible for a chut that his Tarnagelim found and created now a new mazik. The Baal HaChut is not responsible because he didn't leave the chut out. So Mela, nobody's responsible. Halacha Yud Beis. Tarnagelim shehoyim africhim mimokim lemokim v'shavru sakelim while they were flying. So im bekanfeim shavru, if they broke it, actually with the wings touched the kelim and broke it. So then mishalem nezik shalom. However, beruach shebekanfeim, as through the wind that they created through their wings, and that caused that kelim should fall down. So then is mishalem chatzi nezik, because again the ruach shebekanfeim has it enough tzreiris, and memela they're only paying chatzi nezik. Halacha Yud Gimel. Hoyu mahatzin al gabi isa al gabi peres. They were jumping on isa, on a dough, or on gabi peres v'tinfu nikru, and they made it dirty or they made holes in it. So the shaila, the din is mishalem nezik shalom. However, hiziku ba'ofer a betzreir she'elu bekanfeim eberagleim. So notice they, through the fact that they were doing what they were doing, so that caused that things should fall on top of them and become dirty. They were mazik with the offer of the tzreiris, which through the fact that they were doing whatever they were doing, they're throwing the offer and tzreiris, and that went on the dough or the peiros, and that caused the damage to them. Eber Agleim is then Mishalem Chotzi Nezik. So they're only Mishalem Chotzi Nezik again, so a din of tzreiris. Halacha Yudalit. Hoyu mechatitin b'chelev. They were picking at a rope, and v'nifsek achevel, and the chevel got torn, and v'nishbar akdli, and then the pail which was hanging on this rope got broken. So the din is mishalmen nezik shalom. They pay a nezik shalom for the dli. Abevahu shenizgal dli machmosim at shenafel v'nishbar. Question is, knows if they were just picking at the rope, they didn't touch the dli at all, and when the dli got torn, so then the rope fell. So memela, since they didn't come into direct contact with the dli, so therefore that's considered tzreiris, and they would be chayav b'chatzi nezik. Masha'inkin, if they, while they were picking at the rope, and right before the dli started falling, they pushed the dli, so the dli started falling. In other words, that was v'hushin is galgal atli machnosum ad shenofel v'nishbar. So in other words, they didn't go down with the dli all the way down. In other words, they pushed the dli itself. So here, as soon as the dli is on its way down, the dli is already broken. It's kilo, it's broken. So therefore, you're not going to call it tzreiris. In other words, the hezek happened right away. In other words, if the hezek would have happened later when it fell, so then it would be a shaila of tzreiris, because lepel, they didn't do the hezek, they just pushed it, and lepel, it got broken later. Al that we had before with the chut that was pulling the keli. So again, but over here, since as soon as it starts falling, it already has a din of being broken. So mainly you're chayav for what you did originally. But on the other hand, there has to be dafke if the tarnagelis actually touched the dli. Masha'inkin, the tarnagelis would have just been mechated bechevel and would have never touched the dli, so then it wouldn't have had a din, then it would have a din of tzreiris. Nachamol. Hoyu mechatetin bechevel, v'nifsek hachevel, v'nishber adli, mishalmen ezik sholem. However, that's only v'hushin is galgal adli machmosim, at shenofel v'nishber. And if not, the Ram doesn't say what the din would be if not. But if not, the pashtus hadvarim is that it would have a din of tzreiris. Now, v'im hoya lachevel oichel ube'es achilosum pasku, they were eating it, and they were, as a result of that, they cut the rope. So then, mishal and gam ala chevel nezik shalom. Then they would be paying on the chevel also a nezik shalom. They would be paying on the chevel nezik shalom. Basha'inkin, normally to cut a chevel for when there's no food on the chevel, so that would only be a chatzi nezik. So the Ram Vaisus is saying when they're picking at the rope and the rope has food on it, so then they're chayiv and nezik shalom on the rope. Now, what about on the dli? So it depends. If lepel they push the dli down, they're chayiv and nezik shalom on the dli. If they don't push the dli down, then they would be chayiv a chatzi nezik on the dli. Then there would be l'chura. The Ram doesn't say it, but l'chura that would be the din, that they would be chayiv a chatzi nezik on the dli. Now, what happens if there's no food on the rope? There's no food on the rope. So on the rope they would be chayiv a chatzi nezik because it's mishunah, and on the dli, l'chura, the dli lepel, if it fell down through them picking on a dli, which is mishunah, so l'chura would be like a shinui in nezik. We have to think again. But again, just like we had the story with the tarnagil before, when the tarnagil was in a jar and not regular, and lepel, as a result of that, it was tekeya. So over there we said it's chatzi nezik. It's not chatzi nezik tzreiris. So we have to rethink. But that the Ram doesn't say this halacha over here. The halacha that the Ram does say clearly is, it doesn't say the din of what's the din of the dli if they were mechatim bechevel with food or without food. The Rambam just says halacha again. Halacha Yudal. Hoy mechatem bechevel. V'nifsek hachevel v'nishbar adli. So the din is mishalman nezik shalom. V'shin is galgal adli machmosim at shenofel v'nishbar. So on the dli you chayva nezik shalom because you push the dli. That makes no difference. What happened? How? Why they cut the chevel? Did they cut the chevel in an apron of kedarke because there was food there, or did they cut the chevel not in an apron of kedarke? That makes no difference. What's negay over here is that since the dli was nizgalgal machmosim, they pay a nezik shalom. Now, v'im hoya la chevel eichel the beis achilosim pasku mishalem galal mal chevel nezik shalom. Then they pay on the chevel nezik shalom. Now, what happens if there's no food? So then bepashta they pay on the chevel only a chotzi nezik. And now, if there's no food, how much are they going to pay for the dli? And what happens if they didn't push the dli down? So the chura, if they didn't push the dli down, they would be paying a chotzi nezik on the dli. They would have a din of tzreiris. Now, if there was no food, so the chura would be an issue of tzreiris of keren. That's the chura would be the seichel of how you would have to think about this Indian. The Rambam doesn't say all these dinim clearly. Halacha tezvov. Hakelev v'hagdi shekofzu mereish hagag milmayla lamatla v'shavros hakelim is mishalom nezik shalom because it's regular for the kelev and the gdi to be koifetz mereish hagag. Mipnei shemuad nein ledavar zeh. V'cheinim noflu v'yiziku. They didn't jump. They were noflu v'yiziku. Or because shaliyosim l'reish hagag was pshia. V'afal b'shin ifilosim be'eines. They fell be'eines. So when a person brings the kelev and the gdi b'reish hagag in a way that they could fall, so if they jump, it's regular, and even if they fall, which is an union of einus, let's say they fell b'einus, but the fact that they were brought up b'reish hagag is a pshia, and therefore yechayev on nezik sholim for whatever hezek came as a result of the kelev and the gdi coming down. Halacha tezayin. Now that was talking about when it was milmayla lamatas. When it was milmayla lamatas, they were kofats. They're chayiv and nezik shalom, whether they were kofats or nofal. Halacha tezayin kofzu milmata lamayla. So here is mishal mechatzi nezik. Abavuhu shenitla shagdi v'nisrach or v'kofats hakelev. So it's irregular for the kelev to jump, and it's also not regular for the gdi to climb up. So therefore, either way would be a chatzi nezik. Aval would be fakert nisrach hakelev if the kelev climbed up, or v'dila gagdi and the gdi jumped up. So then, bein milmayla lamata, bein milmata lamayla is chayev nezik shalom. So basically, when it comes down, the Rambam doesn't say clearly benegeh coming down both ways, but it's brought down in the Achreinim that when it comes down, on its way down, so whether it's kvitzo or nisrach, either way, they're always chayev nezik shalom. On its way up, so on that there's a din that if the gdi climbed up, or if the kelev jumped up, so then it's chayev a chatzi nezik. But fakert, if it would be that the kelev climbed up and the gdi jumped up, so then they would also be chayiv and nezik shalom. So on its way down, it's always in nezik shalom. On its way up, depending on how they went up. If the kelev, if he goes up climbing, it's a nezik shalom. And masha'in kein the gdi, if he goes up jumping, then it's a nezik shalom. V'chein tarnegel shedilig bein milmayla lamata bein milmata lamayla is always mishal nezik shalom, because for a tarnegel it's very regular to jump up sai lamayla lamata and sai milmata lamayla. Halacha Yud Zayin. Kelev shenotel sacharora, v'holach leila godesh. You have a kelev that takes a charora. A charora is a cookie, but it's attached to a piece of coal. So there's a piece of coal attached to the cookie. Now, v'holach leila godesh. This kelev went to the godesh, the place where there's the silo, where there's tvua. Is if he nicha bagodesh. He left this cookie on the godesh. In other words, the gachel is on the godesh. V'ochel es hacharora, and he ate the cookie. The hidlik is a godesh. Is a lacharora, val mekeim hacharora is mishal nezik shalom. For the actual eating the cookie, and also for the place where it got burnt by putting down this cookie that was attached to the coal, he pays a nezik shalom because that was a direct damage b'yadayim. But val shara godesh, on the rest of the godesh, which is only eish, which is like koichai, because it extended. He didn't. The behemoth took something, and through that it caused the hezek further. So that's a chasi nezik. So that's his din, again a din of tzreiris. In other words, the behemoth took this and it put it here, and through that the fire went further. So that's that gather of tzreiris. That's talking about if he put the cookie down and then the fire went further. And he was schlepping the charora over the godesh, ala godesh, and vehelach v'seirif is mishalom ala charora nezik shalom. On the actual cookie, he pays a nezik shalom because that's regular for him to eat it. However, val mekema gacholim, he has to pay a chotzi nezik, and the reason is because it's a shinui. It's considered a shinui. It's not a regular thing for him to go schlepping the charara over the godish. So therefore, the Mekem HaCholim is a Chotzi Nezek. And then the Rambam says, Val Shara Godish, and on the rest of the Godish, he's potter. Now over here, Be'emes becomes a Shaila. The Lechuris Ein Achinami on the Gecholim is a Chotzi Nezek, because Lepel it's a Shinui. But why shouldn't the Shara Godish be a din of Shinui of Nezek, a Shinui of Keren, and a Shinui of Keren pays a Revi'ah Nezek? That would be the Shaila over here. Why Al Shara Godish is he potter? This is the Ravid's Kasha on the Rambam. And again, the Rambam brings from the Memesha a biur that the whole idea that Eish is koiche is not such a poshta zach. It's a chidush chitchatera that you're chayiv on Eish and it has a din like Hilu, it's kam mikeiche. So Memela, so it's a chidush that said b'negei if we're dealing something that the Be'em is doing something regular, so he put down the charora. So lepeil. So the Eish goes as a din of regular. Masha'inkin, when you're doing something which is l'chatchila mishuna, and now we're saying that there's like a Eish which has a din of koiche, l'gabi something that's mishuna, that's already a davar mechudish in a davar mechudish, and on that we don't say that Eish has a din of koiche. That's what he says. I'll call upon him, it's a davar mechudish. I mean, it's a hard thing to understand. So again, we have a rule that there's a Karen pays a chotzi nezik, tzureiris of Karen pays a revi'ah nezik. When you put down the charara, so the place of the charara has a din that is the behemoth was mazik biyadayim. The eish that goes from the charara is considered koiche of the behemoth, and l'chura. So bishlim, when you put it down regular, so it's koiche of regular regel. So therefore you pay chotzi nezik. If you put it down irregularly, he was schlepping it over the godish. So then on the place where he put it down, he's only chayav a chotzi nezik because it has din of karen. So the pashtus would say that the extension of that would be the eish that comes from that extends part of that should be the din of tzreiris of keren, and you pay a revi'ah nezik. And lepeil, the din is that you don't pay anything. Ashara godish potter, and that's tzorach bir. The Rebbe is asking. Halacha yudches b'med dvarim amurim v'sheshamar bala gecheles es ishei v'sosem adelis uboa kelev v'choter v'notelis charor mi'aloish. So when we're talking about the bala charor is potter, because Lepel, he was shamer his gachelas, and Lepel, the Tarnagel, went ahead and took this gachelas. So now the question is that the Bala Tarnagel should be chayiv. Aval imli shamer ishay, the Bala Eish wasn't shamer, is Bala Eish chayiv al seifes agodish. So the Bala Eish would chayiv al seifes agodish, because Lepel, it's his fire that came with a, so to speak, with a ruach metzuya. Ubala kelev chayiv al achilas agaror al mekema. So on the place where we put it, so he's chayiv because that was his. He did biyadayim. Al der is on the eating of the charor of cheshteitzav, the balatarnagel is chayiv. Mashenk in the hemshech of the eish, we don't look at it. In those l'churi, you could think that there should be there are two people are mishtatfim the hezek. We say no. That since it's his fire, and lepel, his fire is going further, so he's the bala eish and he's chayiv. And the behemoth is only chayiv for the charara that he ate, for the place where he placed the charara, where it was mamish gufei, masha'ink in the place which goes further, which has the din of koichai, he's potter, and over there the bala eish is chayiv. That's what the Rambam is saying. Halacha yutes hamishanse kalbi shel chaveri bechaveri, someone that rates his on someone's dog on someone else, so the din is potter midin yadam, because lepel it's not his dog and he didn't, and he's not the bala kelev. But in the Shemayim, Obala Kelev is chayiv chatzi nezek. Why? Because he's outside din of a mazik. This is a din of keren. In other words, you raise on a kelev to go ahead and be mazik, to do a ma'isa hezek, which is kavanos ilahazik. So as a din of keren. So Obala Kelev chayiv chatzi nezek. Shekiven shu yedea shem shisa is kalbi lahashech neshech. So he knows that it's liable for him to be able to be ungerates, to go ahead and do a hezek, is lehoylei the im shiso ba'atzmei. If the nizik himself was the one that was mishasa the kelev, so then bala kelev potter shekola mishana. There's the person that was mishasa the kelev was the mishana, and then uba'acher v'shini bein lepel the kelev went ahead and was mazik him. So l'churistaini einochanam I was mishasa, but lepel he shouldn't have been mazik. So we say no kola mishana uba'acher v'shini bein potter. Halacha chav shtei paras b'shus harab. Achas revutza, one is lying down, v'achas mahalech, and the other one's walking. Uboata mahalech is berevusa, and the one that was walking kicked the one that was lying. is chayiv chatzi nezik. Shafal pisha darka la'alachala. If it would have walked on top of it, of the behema, it wouldn't have been chayiv because it would have been a din of regel l'reshus harabim. A behem darka levayid, but it's not regular for it to kick. Memela, when it kicks, it has a din of keren, and keren is chayiv chatzi nezik.